Well, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Small Business Development Committee to order. And our first order of business, we'll ask Chairman Tarver to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this another day and the many blessings that you bestow on us. We ask that you lead, guide, and direct in all that we do with the presenters, and that we would learn something from this, and as we endeavor on making laws and rules and regulations for the state of Georgia, it would be what is best for the people and for the state. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cool. All right, on the list, Chris Cornelison, I think you're up. We got the microphone on. We got. I'm sorry. I did not pronounce your name correctly. So,
pretty close.
Oh, pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So my name is Chris Corneliuson. I'm a professor of microbiology at Kennesaw State University and a co-founder in Mycologic, which is a startup company that's emerged out of my research at the university, and that's primarily what I'm here to share with you all, as it is a very small business. So this began as a research journey in 2017 when I received my first grant from the Georgia Department of Agriculture through the specialty crop block grant process to evaluate how we could improve specialty mushroom cultivation, how we could leverage existing technologies to add a new crop to the state and the nation. And you may be wondering, why did we choose to go in this direction? So prior to that, in just conversations with my colleagues, we asked the question, when we go to the grocery store, we can only find a few varieties of mushrooms, but we know that there are many varieties of mushrooms that are both delicious and highly nutritious, and their production doesn't require arable land, it doesn't require intense water or nutrient inputs. It can be done anywhere, so there's really no reason why, 50% of all specialty mushrooms sold in the United States are produced overseas and imported. It should be zero, right? We can produce all of these here. Not only can we produce these mushrooms here, we can actually recycle bulk agricultural residues. So a lot of what we're doing is we're taking spent cotton gin trash or byproduct, as well as spent peanut hulls, and turning that into food for mushrooms. So you can use mushrooms as a value-added product on our large-scale agricultural residues that already are produced in very, very large abundance within the state of Georgia. So they are an ability to garner additional revenues out of that and compete with markets abroad. So how do we do this? Well, first we approach, what's the problem? Why isn't this already happening around here? And so there was some really good data that came out of Cornell University that showed the biggest barrier for mushroom growers was access to labor, proper production facilities, and being able to grow production and meet demand. Almost every grower, they pre-sell every mushroom they grow. It's already committed by the time they produce it, and so if they could grow more, they would produce more. The proper production facilities really stood out to us, and so we focused on developing hardware and software that would automate a lot of the cultivation process and connect that with biological data from the laboratory to optimize yield rates. And what we've ultimately come up with as our first product on the market is a fruiting module. So this is a converted 40-foot container that has embedded systems. So we're measuring things like humidity, CO2, temperature, and those are being highly regulated to fit a specific mushroom variety's optimal needs. This is a third generation. We built the first two generations at KSU as part of grants. Then we spun out the company, and now this is being produced by a third-party manufacturer with our first two units just being delivered over the past couple of months. Here's one that just was delivered to a client in central New York, actually. This is our interface. So really the secret sauce for us is the software in the background that's controlling that embedded system and regulating that environment. It's completely tunable by the grower. And we've also then developed specific kind of parameters for each variety. So for example, a lion's mane mushroom needs a different set of conditions than a shiitake mushroom. We currently support over 23 varieties of choice edible and medicinal mushrooms in our technology and are continuing to expand that offering. So really what we tell to our clients, our customer, our value is we're optimized for mushrooms. We're not moving into this from, say, hydroponic operations or other types of ag, controlled environment ag. We are precise, so we're actually taking data from the research laboratory and integrating that into our product offerings. So it's the very highest quality of data that's informing how we perform. We're able to reduce labor substantially through the semi-autonomous functionality of our technology, specifically around cleanliness. So having a clean environment when you're growing something like mushrooms is really critical, and we've integrated clean-in-place sanitation processes that are automated. And then, as I mentioned, we're also thinking about how we recapture bulk residues like cotton gin byproduct or spent peanut hulls and incorporate that into inputs that improve margins for growers and also recycle byproduct that's highly abundant in the state and the region. So one case study, one of our initial growers here in Georgia is Gowan Valley Farms. They're located in Dalton. When we first started working with them, they were just a vegetable produce farm. And Emma here took it over from her grandfather. So it's been in the family for multiple generations outside of Dalton. And she was looking to pivot, right? Because fruits and vegetables are hard game, especially for a small family farm. There's just not the volume that you need. And she was highly attracted by the favorable margins in specialty mushrooms. And so we partnered with her and we deployed one unit. That's allowed them to produce more than 15,000 pounds a year in just a 320 square foot production area. They grow 23 varieties, they have 2 employees, and now they're reporting over $200,000 a year in revenue based off of just mushroom sales. So they no longer do fruits and vegetables. They are exclusively a mushroom farm, just from one of these units being deployed to their property. That was specifically funded through the Georgia Department of Agriculture, the Georgia Research Alliance, and the Georgia Centers of Innovation to allow us to run this pilot study. At the end of the pilot study, Gowan Valley Farms chose to purchase the unit they had been using because it was so successful for them. So just to give you a little context about our journey, because I think it's really important when you look at the ecosystem for startup development in the state of Georgia, there's a lot of really critical advantages that have allowed a company like this to move out of a university and have the type of impact in the region that we're hoping to have. So the one is the university I'm at, KSU, and a lot of the USG system are highly favorable to this activity, and I think it's critical that we support translational outcomes from research, right? So we need to make sure that those research dollars that are going into our higher ed systems, they're actually turning out products and processes that everyday citizens see, right? That's how they're going to understand the value of those strategic investments. Our first grant was Georgia Department of Agriculture. This was federal pass-through money from USDA on the Specialty Crop Block program. That program specifically says, hey, do research in areas that we aren't already heavily invested in, like soybean or corn or, cotton, big row crops, because we want to diversify and we should be producing more of these foods domestically. And so the program director there, when I wrote the first grant in 2017, called me and we've never seen a mushroom grant before. We're really interested in this, right? And so, we've had 2 additional grants from them through this program. The Georgia Research Alliance is critical. It was their former Vice President Lee Heron, who came up to one of my graduate students at a research symposium and said, this is really neat stuff if you've thought about forming a company. And we went through an accelerator program called Greater Yield, specifically in ag and food tech, and they really helped map us out how to form this company. We've gone through all 3 phases of their entrepreneurship and innovation program, which is really critical to getting us launched. And then we received funding from Georgia Centers of Innovation to allow us to bring in an additional grower, the largest grower in the state of Georgia, LJ Mushrooms, to participate in our pilot study. And without the resources there through the Department of Economic Development, we wouldn't have been able to do that. The one thing I do want to draw the committee's attention to is in 2024, we were very fortunate to become finalists in the Grow New York competition. We ultimately placed third in that business competition focused around food and ag tech. That third place was $250,000 investment through a safe note. That safe note was delivered and administered by Cornell University. Grow New York is an economic development effort in the state of New York. One of the caveats for the funding is you have to set up operations or have some sort of economic benefit in the regions of central New York that are somewhat economically depressed. And so this is a really great program. That year, we won third place, and the first place winner was also a Georgia startup company. It would be phenomenal, I think, for our food and ag tech innovation sector if Georgia was offering opportunities like this as well, where we could compete locally and those resources could stay more locally, because all of our team is located in Metro Atlanta, so administering operations in central New York has certainly been a tricky thing to navigate for us, but we are very fortunate for those resources. And the last thing I like to show is this is Emma with some really impressive looking lion's mane mushrooms that she grew using our technology. And we hope that our growers that are able to work with us are smiling like this because their yields are out the roof and they're able to kind of really transform their business. And I'm happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
I have a lot of questions. I know I do. All right. Chairman Tall?
I'll be as quick as I can. Have you ever been to that Gowan Family Farms?
Yes.
Is it in South Whitfield or North Walker County? Do you know?
It's Rocky Face specifically.
Well, yeah, okay. The address goes into both counties. Does mushroom start from a spore or a seed?
A spore.
Okay. Do you develop the spores and distribute to the people that have the modules?
We can. That is one of the things we offer. So we have a very robust culture library at KSU that was licensed to the company, and we're able. Some of those are clones we've pulled from the wild, even on campus, for example, off of a tree.
Good follow-up. Do all the mushrooms are grown inside that module or another module? They're not started there and then moved out. They grow in the module themselves.
Yeah, they grow in the module. So there's spawn cultivation. So you take the spore, you grow up a bunch of mycelia, you inoculate that into your substrate, and that's where you get fruiting from. So you actually get the fruiting body. So what you're seeing, the mushroom itself, is a sexual reproductive structure for the organism. So it's a specific growth phase of the fungus. That
Okay, what you're calling a substrate, is that the peanut hulls and cotton?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman Yurda?
Okay. Thank you for the very interesting project you're doing there. What kind of investment would one of these modules be for a potential grower?
So right now we're currently offering that 40-foot unit for $127,000.
Okay. And as far as marketing the mushrooms, for instance, does she sell to stores and things like that, or is it basically she's selling herself?
So both. So Gowan's been very successful selling into the Chattanooga space, and
Right.
a lot of really high-end restaurants that are looking for it are great customers. She also has some very popular farmers markets. You get your best margins at something like farmers markets, where the clientele really are open to paying more for something that's kind of boutique. And so they target that. Of course, you can imagine that's quite investment heavy.
Right.
So they are looking at more wholesale options like local farm stores and things like that in the region.
What's the growing period for these mushrooms? Is it how many crops can you grow?
Yeah. So each variety is slightly different, right? So
Right.
something like lion's mane there, from the time that you're putting the block into the fruiting or the bag into the fruiting module, you have harvest in 7 to 10 days.
Okay. Pretty quick. Pretty quick. Well, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so right now what we've modeled through our pilot data is if you operate one of these at max capacity with wholesale prices predicted on common varieties, 127 is your front end cost. You can produce about $270,000 of mushrooms annually if you keep it going. So the return rate, it's a high end product, right? Expectation, but there is a very proximal return on that. And we've been fortunate that organizations such as Georgia Farm Credit are open to financing this for our customers. They see it as farm infrastructure, just like a tractor or a silo would be.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My question is, what kind of expertise do you need to actually get into the business?
Yeah, that's really, I think another real value add we bring is with sort of, multiple PhD level microbiologists founding the company. We don't just kind of drop off technology and say good luck, right? A lot of what we do is the onboarding. So we've developed lots of materials, basic introduction to what is mushroom cultivation, what are the steps to it, troubleshooting issues like contamination or reduced yield rates. And we offer a lot of consultation services as well to actually walk hand in hand with you through the process to get you started. Because we're not going to have very many customers if they're not successful with the tech, right? So the tech's only part of that. Training becomes a really critical element, and making sure that we're there to support the growers through their whole journey.
Cool. Are there any other questions? Good. Do you want to have anyone come speak from the, what was it? Do you want to come say anything about?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very, very much for
Thank you,
your
Mr. Chairman.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
Good. Cool. That is interesting. I imagine one of your biggest customers would be the pizza industry.
Yeah, so that's a different type of mushroom than what we grow. That's an agaricus. So what's interesting is about 90% of all the agaricus
Get one.
used in Georgia or used in the United States come out of one county in Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah. So
Thank you.
the mushroom industry is very interesting. Yeah. Well, I've written multiple grants to NASA about growing mushrooms in space. They haven't funded me yet. But
Did she ask about the town you smoked?
You got those guys that are stuck up there to do.
yeah, they
Well,
can
good.
use it, right? Thank you.
Well, good. Chad, Roy, y'all are up. Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. That was fascinating.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to be here. I'm Ben Cowart. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs for Georgia Retailers. Georgia Retailers is a statewide business advocate organization that has been the voice of retail here in the state for more than 60 years. We work to shape policies, advocate for our members, and foster a retail environment for where all businesses of all sizes can thrive. And thanks to our efforts and the legislature's continued support, Georgia remains one of the most retail-friendly states in the nation. As all industries do, ours faces many evolving challenges, and one of the most pressing has been organized retail crime, or ORC. So recognizing this threat, Georgia Retailers took action in 2010 and formed a coalition of retail loss prevention professionals and law enforcement leaders. This partnership led to the passage of the Georgia Smash and Grab Act, strengthening penalties for organized retail theft and laying the foundation for one of the most effective public-private organized retail crime alliances in the country, which is GROC. So today, Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance, or GROC, stands as a national model for collaboration, uniting retailers and law enforcement to share intelligence, coordinate enforcement efforts, and strengthen legal frameworks to combat ORC in our state. Through monthly intel sharing meetings, education initiatives, joint enforcement operations, and our annual retail crime conference in Atlanta, GROC continues to kind of set the standard for proactive crime prevention. And this efforts were recognized nationally this past year, where GROC received the 2024 Loss Prevention Hall Award for Outstanding Retail Crime Alliance. So we appreciate the legislature's continued support on our fight against organized retail crime. Really want to mention that appreciate last year's funding of the new organized retail crime and cybercrime prosecution unit within the AG's office that has is and will continue to be a huge help for our efforts. And then also very grateful for the House overwhelming passage of HB 447 this year, which targets combating gift card fraud, and we hope to get that out of the Senate this week. But joining me today are Chad McManus and Rory Stollard, both of whom serve on the GROC Council, and they're going to share more about what's going on with GROC and driving some of our strategic partnerships and taking action to combat ORC in the state.
Well, good morning. What Ben said, he covered it all. I think he took all my notes there, but I'll dig a little bit deeper into the Organized Crime Alliance just to give you some perspective about what we're all about. So you got a little handout in front of you there that really highlights a lot of the things that we did over the last year, and really since 2012. You can almost mirror a lot of these things that we've been able to succeed and accomplish those things since our inception back in 2012 as an alliance. So just for the record, I'm Chad McManus. I am a senior manager of asset protection with a major retailer here in the state, but I'm also the chair of the Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance. So I've got myself along with Rory and Ben and a group of about 14 other law enforcement and asset protection, loss prevention professionals for different retailers throughout the state and the nation that sit on this council. And we kind of guide the different things that we try to do when it comes to impacting organized retail crime here in the state of Georgia. So we've grown since day one. We're over, on the report here, we say we're about 750 members strong. We're close to 800 members strong, and that's a mix of both retailers, folks that are working for the various retailers in investigations and asset protection, loss prevention, retail crime initiatives, and then law enforcement. So we have over 90 plus law enforcement agencies that are connected with our organization, and our goal was really to bridge that gap between retail and law enforcement. So what we found back in the beginning of when we started things off is retailers were conducting their investigations, trying to do what they needed to do to prevent losses, protect their people within their organization. Law enforcement was kind of doing the same thing in the communities, but we really just weren't talking. So there was resources that could be shared. Law enforcement sometimes has other things going on in their areas, and so when retailers can come in and help support law enforcement investigations involving retail, it's just a force multiplier for us. So we have over, like I said, close to 800 members that are really united in fighting organized retail crime here in the state of Georgia. One of our meat and potatoes of the organization is our monthly intel sharing meetings, like Ben mentioned there briefly, which is basically just an opportunity for us to get together and talk about things that are going on in our businesses and what we've seen. In any one of these meetings, there's always some sort of connection. For example, a retailer may say, hey, I had a gentleman walk out, I shouldn't say gentleman, I had a person or an individual walk out with a bunch of product that wasn't paid for, and we're working this investigation, here's a picture of them, and then somebody else from another retailer says, oh, I have an investigation on that too, and then maybe a law enforcement agency is like, hey, we're looking at that as well too, so we can kind of all combine and share that information to get the bad guys off the street and protect our businesses and protect our people. So that's really the core of what we do, but we also branch out. When we started this organization, we really tried to focus on the legislation piece, which Ben has mentioned. We talked about education, we talked about awareness and connecting, and then bringing everybody together for a networking perspective. And that's kind of what we do through the course of the year. We have several events that we host in partnership with agencies around the state. Most recently, we brought in some folks last year to do a RICO, which is racketeering. You're going to test me on my knowledge of that. Racketeering and what is it, Rory? Influencing Corrupting Act. Yeah, guys. So I always, I've been in the industry for 35 plus years. I should know that, but I always forget what RICO is. But so we brought in a group with Cherokee County of law enforcement and retailers to talk about that, like how we can leverage that in the state to get bad actors off the street. We did a law enforcement only conference. Again, in partnership with Cobb County, where we brought in just law enforcement officers from all over the state to share the message of what we're doing and trying to get those partnerships together to fight those crimes. We've been able to be involved with Georgia Chiefs of Police, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, just all kinds of gypstick down at the training center, just talking about retail crime and raising that awareness piece. And then from a perspective of something that might be of interest to this group, from a small business perspective, recently we had an excellent opportunity. The Atlanta Braves retailers down at the Battery invited Cobb County and us to come down and talk to those retailers that are in the Battery. And so whenever I go to a Braves game, I just go to the Braves game. I really wasn't paying attention to what was going on there, but there are some retailers down there that are small businesses as well as the Braves shop. But it was amazing to hear from them that they are experiencing issues with retail theft and crime in the Battery. The amount of stories I heard about folks walking out with jerseys and stuff from the Braves shop, or there's a baseballism store down there that sells a lot of memorabilia and things like that. So we had the opportunity to kind of talk to the folks that work in those stores down there about what retail crime is about, things that they can do to help prevent those, prevent thefts from happening, and then partnership with us to try to make a difference. So those are just some of the things that we're doing. Ben mentioned that we have definitely got involved in that legislative piece. And again, I just want to reiterate our thankfulness to this group and the Georgia State and the House, because without some of these things that have been put in place over the last year, we would still be struggling. But we're really leading, I think, in Georgia, leading in the nation as some of the things that we're doing proactively to fight the retail crime. Specifically, like what Ben said, is that enactment of that ORC unit through the AG's office. I mean, it's been a great partnership. They've hit the ground running. A lot of retailers are partnering with them, and we hopefully will soon see some great results in combating retail crime from that partnership. So again, the support of city governments, of state governments, because you all are enacting some of these laws that really make a difference. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the retailers and the Organized Crime Alliance. So I do have, if I'm allowed to, we have some challenge coins that we always give out to folks that support the cause and do things to help us out. So if you want one before we leave, I'd be happy to give you one, and would answer any questions. But I think we're going to let Rory talk a little bit here about some cases and some other things going on.
Good morning. As Chad mentioned, so I sit on the council with Chad and other representatives from retailers. My name is Rory Stallard, and I'm the director of ORC for Ulta Beauty. So we're based in Chicago, but I sit here in Atlanta, so I am here when I'm not traveling. So I have the program national from a perspective of, we have about 1,400 stores, and I've been involved with Chad and with G-Rock really since inception, since like 2010. But a couple of things that I just wanted to kind of reiterate that Chad talked about. So for the ORC aspect, just to echo a few messages. So like with the Georgia, with Tim Raffini and with the Attorney General's office with the ORC unit, like we actively have several cases with them right now. I actually had my manager up from Miami meeting with Tim and his team last week on some active investigations. All along Georgia, there's a heavy presence of law enforcement supporting these types of cases. We have a significant issue that we had with burglaries going into last year that went unresolved, that we just met with Gwinnett County last week. They resolved a string of burglaries that started up in 575 and worked its way all the way down to South Georgia. That not only impacted Ulta Beauty, but impacted numerous retailers, including small businesses, including liquor stores and convenience stores. So those offenders are in the process of that case is being resolved. They've been identified and are being arrested. And then even in Hiram, as Chad talked about, a lot of the cases when it deals with organized retail crime, it's not just affecting the big business, and it's not just affecting the business as a whole, that it is a community base. So Chad mentioned the RICO statutes, and we've been able to work with some agencies, one particular agency is in Hiram, that we have national level people that are traveling through many different states, half of the country, that come into Atlanta, commit various crimes, and then we run into issues where we have all the different jurisdictions. We have to parse out certain parts of the case, but we're able to take some agencies, through some of that training that we've been able to help be a part of, and for them to put together a very strong RICO case as we identify these individuals, to charge them with all the losses in the state, and then turn around and partner with the other states to make sure that all that is part of their investigations. And we've had some success with that and some great partnerships out of Hiram leading on those types of investigations. And so whether it's working with the district attorney's office or working with the AG task force, we've really made a lot of headway. And thank you for all of your support in helping us get some of those valuable resources that we need, because it really does affect our guests and our associates, which, you know, my team's out working all these crimes and trying to resolve that. And of course, it's great for business. But the first thing that we deal with is that when we have these violent smash and grabs, when we have groups that are coming in our store, it's not what our associates signed up for. We're in the loss prevention game, and Chad and I have been doing this for 30 years, and this is my 27th year specializing in ORC, and this is my 4th Fortune 500 company, so I'm used to it. But our associates, our managers, our cashiers, that's not what they're used to dealing with, and it can be a traumatic event when those things happen in our stores, and it disrupts business, and there's repair costs, not to mention when the guest is impacted. So that's what we're charged with working on these investigations, and it really does take a coalition. It takes that partnership between retail and loss prevention, and then also with our law enforcement partners to help resolve some of these issues, not only to get some satisfaction to get those people out of our buildings, but to prevent those future losses so that everybody can be safe and continue to thrive, you know, with business in Georgia.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Number 12?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for bringing us this information. I did do some legislation. I think it was House Bill 327. I know it was Representative Montaham, but I brought it because my, at the time, she was our solicitor. She had wanted us to change the code so that when individuals would go like from one Home Depot in Clayton County and steal, then they would go to the next one and the next one, but they were only charged individually or whatever. But anyway, we did change that code in there so that once they were caught, they were charged for everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So much for that. It makes my job so much easier when we can do that and we don't have to take those individual cases to all the different jurisdictions.
Cool. Thank you. All right, number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for bringing this information to us. This is something we've heard on a national level when we go to Women in Government, so we know that there's a problem. And I know I talked to Ben about coming to South Fulton and doing some work down there, because I heard you've been a couple of places, but I didn't hear if there is any plans in the future to come to South Fulton and kind of educate us. Work with us.
Yeah, we would be happy to set that up. We're always looking for good opportunities to spread the message and bring awareness to what we're working on here.
And my last question, thank you, was when is your conference date? What?
August 13th this year, and it will be at in Cobb County at their at the Sheriff's Department there, at the
Thank
training
you.
facility.
So in the bottom of your handout, we have our website. So we do have a platform on the web, so you can go visit us at georgiarock.org, and you can kind of get some more details and information about the different things that we're doing. And we try to keep it up to date, just with stuff going on. But to your point on coming out to different places to do that, we'd love to, because that monthly intel sharing meeting, sometimes we call it a road show, and we go out and we host that with an agency. And I know in talking with our partners at the AG's office, they're also looking to get out and do some community discussion and things like that. So we can definitely work something out and try to get down there. I do know, I can't tell you who, but I do know we have a couple officers from South Fulton that are on our platform that are involved in that. So that's it's good. That
Maybe if you can get me those names, I can work with them instead of trying to find out who's the
I'll check
place.
and see.
And then just to follow up, I would love to connect with this Georgia Association of Women in Public Safety. I've never heard of them. Love to just find out who they are.
Yeah, so there's a lady on our council. Her name is Sherry. She's the president of that organization. So it's Georgia Association of Women in Public Safety. They just had an annual conference in Athens a couple weeks ago, and so we try to partner with them to kind of share the message as well there and support them. But yeah, definitely you can get you some information and connect with her.
Cool. All right, number 22.
Quickly, you're part of the Georgia Retailers Association. I mean, I figured that, but I just wanted to make sure. And G-Rock's been around since 2010.
Yeah, so 2010 was where kind of that Loss Prevention Council came into fruition on some of those legislative pieces we talked about. G-Rock was formed in 2012. So we've been 2010, but 12 was the official.
How old organization is ROC? You're a national, and you're not with G-Rock, you're with,
No, I am with G-Rock. I sit on the council. My daytime job is I'm just the director of ORC for Ulta Beauty, but I do sit on the council of
okay,
G-Rock.
ROC is,
ORC?
yes, is what?
Organized retail crime.
That's what how long has it been in place?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been employed in this business for 27 years, specializing in ORC. I was with Target, I was with Home Depot, I was with Toys R Us, and now Ulta Beauty. So 27 years, and ORC was happening before I started working, but it's been my career for 27 years.
Cool, thank you. All right, number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and good morning to you all. Thank you for your presentation. I was especially interested when you said you found out in a meeting and having a conversation that both sides were dealing with the same individual, because I had that same situation when I was dealing with human trafficking with the First Lady, and we found out that the police on one side were dealing with it, and then the police somewhere else, and then somebody else was dealing. But when you collaborate, that makes the biggest difference, because then you can definitely fight the situation. And I appreciate that. And I'm so happy also that my colleague asked you to come to South Fulton, and I will be present. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. It's good for us to hear the fact that, you know, an organization said 750 strong and 90 law enforcement agencies. I used to write warrants at the courthouse 2 blocks away from here. And so many times when we have retailers would come in and to explain kind of the new ways within which the public who are kind of those who aren't they have the potential to be criminal, and oftentimes actually working in with those who are kind of masters at it, you know, and having to do those search warrants. 2 questions I had. One, in what way have you seen, from a loss prevention aspect, can the public oftentimes take part in terms of being able to help, or at least being aware when you're giving your training courses? Particularly, is there something there that you're able to invite the public in on the loss prevention side, just so that they're either, you know, aware, or at least in some way helping to stop what would be a criminal process later?
I think from an awareness perspective, whether it's been national news media, whether it's been local stories, anything in the state of Georgia, making the consumer or the customer aware that it's not just shoplifting. There is an education that, you know, a lot of the cases that we work, that I'm involved with my company-wide, and it does happen in Georgia, are ties to organized crime, people that are traveling through, going through various corridors, using the proceeds of their organized retail crime to further their other criminal enterprise. In my career, I've done things tied to terrorism. I've done things with human trafficking, drug trade. And so now more and more the prolific, you know, gangs, especially, that, you know, it's not always in their best interest to do the crimes that they used to. And so the general public sometimes still has a hard time just saying, well, it's just shoplifting, you know, and I don't understand the difference. So when we do something from a national media perspective or local media, it gets the word out there, and it lets people know that we're not talking about someone taking, you know, a cell phone or a tube of lipstick, that it's a much bigger problem, that when we work with law enforcement and there's a search warrant served at a location that's buying and selling stolen property, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of product that we're recovering. And a lot of these cases, you know, eclipse the multi-million-dollar mark. And so I think the first thing is the education and awareness that it's a much bigger problem, and then tying it back to, you know, the businesses, whether it's large or small, at the end of the day, they do have to factor in the cost of being profitable.
Yeah.
And so the more and more that this type of activity happens, that's more that they have to spend on staffing, equipment, that's more that they have to charge on their products and their shipping to offset the cost that they're losing through these losses. And sometimes the regular consumer or their customer doesn't always realize that. And so it's that education that really helps with that.
Thank you. One further question, Chairman. With the intense work that you had working with the ORC through the Attorney General Chris Carr's office, what are you able to find with respect to, I know many times you may have some kind of local syndicates, but sometimes it'll run outside. Are there any particular bad actors in terms of any bad actors outside the United States that are kind of high on that rung? Just curious. And that's not to get the challenge coin later, but just curious.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know there are cases that are being worked here in Georgia that tie back to Chicago, New York, Atlanta. Depending on which list you look at, they're still in the top 10 to top 13 cities for organized retail crime across the U.S. And Atlanta is a destination city for a lot of people, including criminals. So I know personally with my company, we have traveling groups that we've had in California, that we've had in New York, and we find them down here. We just closed an investigation last week with my company out in California, pretty substantial for several $100,000. They made a run through Georgia because now we are making sure that they're being charged with what they did here now that we have them locked up in California. So I know that happens on a regular occurrence, not just for my company, but for other retailers that are part of GROC. And that's part of us being able to work together. And I know that the AG's office has done a great job about looking at the nexus, that it may not always begin or end in Georgia, but it may be that it's connected to other areas, and making sure that, appropriately we work the case up. And that means tying in a lot of the bigger fish, so to speak, or the organizations that are buying and selling the stolen property, because that's what's creating the demand for the actual theft that's occurring.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Number 22.
Just quickly, I know we got other presenters, but if you don't have it, could you get us an idea sometime of the percentage of loss in the state of Georgia with retail, what it might cost retailers and how much it would make their prices be higher? That would be interesting to know.
Absolutely, I'll get you that.
Cool. Thank you. I wanted to thank you all because it's a big problem that's faced throughout the state, and I appreciate the update. Thank you both for taking the time to be here. I appreciate your presentation. Ben.
Thank you.
Always good to see you, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, I want one of those coins. All right. Antoinette Ball, the floor is yours. Oh, cool. I got a bunch of them. There you go.
Good morning, good morning.
I'll give you one. Good morning. That's some down there.
Can we take pictures here?
I'm sorry?
Can we take pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, great, okay. First, I want to say thank you, Representative Schofield. We're happy to be here this morning. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Antoinette Ball. I'm one of the founders of the Women's Entrepreneurial Opportunity Project Incorporated. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization located right down the street in Grant Park. We launched the organization in 1999, so we have been 20 plus years strong. I started the organization with my twin sister. She's the oldest, she's sitting back there. And I want to start by providing a little background to say that we started the organization with the shared vision of a mission-driven organization grounded in 3 pillars. We focus on civic engagement, leadership development, and small business support. At the heart of all the work that we do at WEOP is that we try to support women in business, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. We host networking events educational classes, economic equity forums, and business roundtables on a regular basis. We believe that entrepreneurship is more than just a career choice. It is a critical pathway to economic self-sufficiency. Even in times when traditional employment is hard to secure, owning a business, whether it is a gig work, a small venture, or a government contract, gives women something to stand on, something that they can build and grow, which is very important. Our programs are intentionally designed to innovate and adapt, to equip women with the knowledge, tools, and community that they need to thrive in the business world. We had the honor of working aside Representative Schofield, and this is my first time of being at the Capitol presenting, so I'm pretty honored to be here. Schofield educates us, and we want to create awareness about what is going on with this legislation. So we're about education, empowerment, and supporting women in the community. I am surrounded by some incredible women, Montez Diamond and Sinead Commodore, and we want to just say that we give a message of collaborating, working together, having programs. We're kind of a grassroots organization, but we know that we do meaningful work within our community. And after over 2 decades of doing this kind of work, supporting what we call marginalized, underserved women with programs, because we know how difficult it is. We walk the talk, and we make things happen within our community. So just kind of wanted to introduce the organization. We recently had a economic empowerment event hosted by Georgia Power. We have a long string of supporters that have supported our organization, from banks to community foundations, and we're really serious about what we do within our communities. And we think that there is a need for organizations that are founded by people like myself, that are working, doing this hard work is so important. And I want to thank Representative Schofield for being along that journey with us, educating us and making us aware, because we understand the power of collaboration and that we can't just work in a silo. We have to work collectively together. We have to identify things that are going on within our communities, because we live in our communities, we work in our communities, and we support each other. So I'm going to give my ladies that are sitting next to me a chance to kind of put a face in terms of what we do as an organization. So let me begin with Sinead.
All right, good morning, everyone. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you. So my contribution to the organization, in addition to what she spoke to, is my expertise comes from 35 years in federal procurement. So my focus is on working with businesses, all small businesses, and of course, women entrepreneurs, on how to navigate the federal space. So these we always see changes with each administration, and one thing that we're commonly seeing now is we understand the need for efficiencies and different ways to resolve things. The challenge is, how can we still collaborate and build entrepreneurship as well as sustain the success of the businesses that are already in place? So, for example, the state of Georgia has over 9,000 federal defense contractors, totaling over $1 billion in revenue. Where is that going to go, right? When you have 20% or more whose contracts have been terminated or they're being shifted, how is Georgia going to be able to regain and maintain the stability in the economy for that? So, for example, just some information about myself. I've always been in federal procurement for the Air Force Base, for the Army, for Department of Energy, for CDC, so both defense and civilian sides. And it's the same. There are over $200 billion that are spent on professional services in the federal government. And then there are the contracting procurement staff that are also now being shifted. So inevitably, this work still needs to be done, and our goal is that as an organization, we'll be able to help the businesses in Georgia pivot and scale to that. And we are looking at innovation and training and, even teaching them more about AI strategies and how to use AI to be more productive and innovative as well. Also more about me just on a personal level. And my story is similar to several other women's stories. you know, you have over 100,000 federal employees in the state of Georgia, right? Half of those, almost half of those, like myself, are over 50. We are part of the sandwich generation. We're not just caretakers of our family, we're caretakers of our parents. So there's the additional responsibility that we've already seen that is now being compounded because of the change in government policies, because you already have 69% of people that are depleting their savings for health care. And then you add on the additional responsibility of simply trying to maintain and provide food and longevity and safety for your families. So our goal is that we're building upon that by, you know, what can we do from a strategic standpoint, because we also know that scarcity leads to innovation. So Georgia is also in a good position to identify ways that we can collaborate with organizations like WEOP and work with the community to help capture the knowledge that is retiring. That's leadership succession. You talk about leadership development, that's leadership succession. What can we do to capture that leadership knowledge and train our students, our workforce, our entrepreneurs on how to build and scale to that? That's going to help grow Georgia's revenue. It's also going to help us be more competitive on a national and international space. So those are the things, leadership development, also looking at what is shifting in the federal government. We've heard more recently about GSA schedules. There are several thousand government contractors in Georgia that have GSA schedules, which are pre-approved vendors that have been technically qualified with fair and reasonable pricing to provide services and products. So Georgia also has service providers, but there are also product providers, whether they're manufacturers, distributors, and resellers. So how can we use them to also help them navigate into state and local government? That is going to help Georgia grow as well. And so those are some of the ideas that we have to do that. Thank you for your time.
Good morning to the members of the committee, as well as the businesses in attendance and the additional attendees this morning. My name is Montez Diamond. It's a pleasure to be in the People's House, as Representative Schofield reminds us. So it's nice to be able to stop by and grab a little economic development snack with you this morning. As it pertains to WEOP, I've been a member of WEOP for the past 8 years, actually. Very happy and ecstatically, primarily to be able to collaborate regarding strategic positions and partnerships as it pertains to ensuring that businesses have a fuller understanding as to how to engage with the actual regulatory process, helping to inform them, helping them to be a part of it, and helping them to understand that they have to politicize their businesses. And it's something that is a conversation regarding a very high learning curve oftentimes, because that opportunity is set on the shelf as it pertains to intergovernmental affairs departments and divisions, as well as chambers of commerce. I'm here specifically to speak to small business concerns as it pertains to a particular act. So as of March 31st of 2025, SB 28 has passed the Georgia Senate and is under consideration in the House to ensure new laws benefit rather than hinder small businesses. It's also known as the Red Tape Rollback Act of 2025. And the small business concerns that my clients come to me about, and excuse me, I didn't properly introduce myself, but I'm the founder of an organization called the Endow Group, and Endow is spelled I-N-D-O, the French way, because my mother used to say the French prayer, and she used to say the Lord's Prayer in French, so that's why I call it the Endow Group. To endow people is to provide an asset quality and or an ability for them to understand and draw closer to understanding regulatory impacts on their businesses. Specifically, as it pertains to the Red Tape Rollback Act of 2025, the issues that small businesses want to know specifically is about their participation within the process. So yes, they can come and attend and come before you and speak, but specifically as it pertains to this act, there are going to be small business considerations and opportunities for public commenting purposes, but there's also going to be is to also ensure that elected representatives have a direct role in approving major regulatory changes. So when you're making these major regulatory changes and ensuring that you include effects on service costs, workforce availability, industry competition, and compliance, this act is going to require agencies complete or draft an economic impact analysis. Small businesses are concerned because beyond small businesses being able to offer public comment, they want to know, can a solution be created to allow them to be a part of the actual written legislation process? Can it be written into the legislation to actually have small businesses as a part of some type of task force, some other type of committee written into the legislation? They also want to know, how can you actually gauge small business interests and understandings, because oftentimes the legislation is written by individuals who have never walked in the shoes of an entrepreneur a day of their life. So being able to draw closer to that proximity, and not even being disrespectful for what I just said, but the fact of the matter is that oftentimes people are involved in policy-making decisions, and they are not necessarily dealing with the issues that place the food on the table for many small businesses and entrepreneurs. There are many stressors, and people assume oftentimes that small businesses know everything, but one thing that small businesses are really gearing up is being more competent, and that's why I exist, and that's why I'm able to collaborate with WEOP to ensure that we're able to have more of an understanding as to how we can be able to be a representation and extension of your tentacles of advocacy to ensure that small businesses are just as impactful, and they're able to be able to speak very confidently and participate in these matters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on these concerns.
Thank you for that presentation. We've got a couple of questions. Number 22.
Appreciate you ladies very much, and as you mentioned, I was when people hear defense contractor or supply chain, they think of missiles, but I was a contractor and subcontractor for a defense supply chain, and it was anything the soldier carried or wore besides the firearm, and so that gets pretty widespread, from shoelaces to. So it's quite a array of people, and I can appreciate that. You mentioned navigate the regulatory process with the small. How much problem do you see with in Georgia with overregulation or regulations, or things that we would be interested to know as things we could do to make it easier for businesses? If there's regulations out there that become obsolete and those type things, it'd be very well to report back to this committee sometime if you could.
Okay. I'm on this entrepreneur journey because as a result of the new administration, I had to resign because of the new administration. Nonetheless, I am a former Region 4 advocate for the Office of Advocacy for the Small Business Administration. I was a federal appointee. In that office, in that position, I was able to, excuse me, be a representative, and engage with legislators as well as businesses to ensure that they understood the connection between what you just said, in essence, for 8 southeastern states, which is why I'm so impassioned about the matter. So as it pertains to helping with this particular issue, more than likely it would be very helpful to have more representatives, to have more surveying opportunities. So yes, you have agencies that provide public comment opportunities, but for the actual legislator also have comment opportunities publicly to be able to engage more with the public, and then using more resources like REOP and other organizations to publicize the opportunity to provide a public space that's easy to be able to travel to, and so that businesses is on their radar. Oftentimes, small businesses really believe that there has to be some type of that the proximity has to be so far from legislators that they don't know necessarily that it is an intimate relationship, that you are approachable, so to speak. It seems as if they have to have someone to come in on their behalf, but being in a position to create these different accoutrements, so to speak, to be able to make it more personalized definitely would help with that issue.
Hi, and I'm sorry. And I'd also like to add, I think that some of the certifications that are required for small businesses, if there could be some legislation that may add some equivalencies, for example, a federal certification as a woman-owned small business or 8A is not equivalent to a DBE or an MBE certification that may be required for the state of Georgia. So it takes resources and money for these organizations to apply and complete this certification process. And I think if there was some legislation that established some equivalencies with some of the certifications, that would help the businesses as well in terms of access and being procurement ready, even for the state of Georgia. And then to follow on with what she said about the public notice and comment period, that there is some additional education to that, because even when the small businesses are tracking and reading it, there's a challenge with interpretation. What does this mean? How does this impact my business? And what do I need to do? So when we are publicizing that, then I think there should be some additional explanation in regard to that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be able to address you. I have worked with 1/3 of your trio, Ms. Diamond, before these gray hairs wound up on my face. With our work, being able to help at least inform our youth of the opportunities to better improve their educational outcomes. And I know that it's I have a couple of questions, but I hope I'm not putting you too much on the spot, because I think just the time within which we live has really found us in a very challenging position to be able to make sure that our small businesses can still remain relevant, can still be able to attain capital, but also to still be able to find alignment with the new code of business that is being legislated in levels beyond the state of Georgia. And so I wanted to know from your aspect, do you find that our current time right now, how are you able to navigate that challenge? And I think because particularly for you, you've had that experience in the federal contracting side where we're seeing a purge. From just those minority labels, have you been able to find that you've still been able to be an advocate for those who are from underserved communities, even though you may have to be able to champion it outside of recognizing it for its minority value?
Yes, thank you for the question. So one example is comparing the federal requirements to the state requirements and looking at what is the need. So as I just mentioned, certifications, advising businesses on, okay, what does the state require for me to do this work? I have these federal certifications, but now what kind of certifications do I need so that I can work for the state and local government? And that's why I mentioned the DBE, the MBE, because there are different certifications that the Department of Transportation, state transportation requires. There's different certifications that MARTA requires, and so forth. So first of all, recognizing what those gaps are and how resources need to be spent for that. The next challenge is in looking at, okay, there is a Department of State Administrative Services. What kind of opportunities are there available for me to participate in? And as you know, the government procurement cycle for the larger size projects, there's a much longer procurement lead time for that. So it's also identifying, okay, where in this contract life cycle do I fall in? And how long is it going to take for me to generate revenue, even if I find an opportunity that is suitable for me? And what do I do in the meantime? Because there are cost and time necessary for building the relationships, proving the credibility, and so forth. And that was that's another reason I mentioned if there was a way to also have an equivalency for GSA schedules. Right. So there will be a lot of GSA schedule holders now with GSA right sizing that program that could lose their GSA schedule, which are potential 20-year pre-approved vehicle. Mm-hmm. So how is there a way that the Georgia vendors that have approved GSA schedule holders, again, they're proven technically qualified and fair and reasonable pricing, if they could be placed as part of the people that have a GSA state contract? I mean, a Georgia state contract, mm-hmm. right? So as you know, the more competition, the more adequate pricing that you have. That's an additional benefit to Georgia as well. So working with them to navigate and understand the unique differences between federal and state, identifying where they fit in, and then putting together a strategy from the next 30, 60, 90 days and beyond as to get them to a revenue generating place as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Just one more, sorry, Mr. Chairman. I will be quick. One of the things that because I do intend to share this meeting with my constituents, one of the things that always remains a heavy topic is that when there has been a focus on women-owned businesses, those who are themselves not women but are supportive of women, or at least hope to be, often find themselves in the position where they're questioning kind of their own value. They may have grown up in a very kind of traditional mindset of where if the male is the sole provider, that there's some type of desire there to still be a breadwinner. But from your workings with women-centered businesses, what is the most supportive role that you believe men should take on in order to still be able to see your business thrive in the future, but still know that they have a place of value?
Collaboration. There is not one answer that all of us can do alone. So collaboration is extremely important, whether it's a woman or another male. There's no one's going to say, I don't want to be successful, so I'm not going to work with you. Collaboration is important, and not just someone saying, I'm going to collaborate with you and sign an agreement. Someone that is really to be intricately involved in the business. Most businesses, all of us, even large businesses, small business, there are gaps there. So collaboration, being supportive, whether that's advising or sharing resources, HR, IT experience, again, that knowledge and development, but collaboration is extremely important. If you're going to partner with a woman-owned business, truly having some work share where they're going to generate some revenue that's going to add to their bottom line so that they can scale and grow. So I think, again, from the federal, even on Georgia, this is a wonderful time to build that kind of infrastructure for the state of Georgia and make us all more successful, but also become even better in the entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout the U.S.
I want to add as well as we have men that support our organization. So we have men that have served on our board of directors, men that support our businesses. So even though we're women-centered, we can't do this work without men. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And we're also a membership organization with 900 plus strong members online. And some of the members are males as well.
Number one last question.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, ladies, for being here. This was just wonderful. I guess I won't have too much of a summer because I can see we're going to be working on these issues that you've talked about. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing them to this group. You talked about collaboration. So this is also just a question and just a statement, really, is when we talk about collaboration and work share, I'd like to really look at how many women do you have in the organized retail space and all of these opportunities. I do believe Georgia has an amazing opportunity right now to do things we haven't done before. But I just want to also, heads up, when you guys are doing your workforce in that space of organized retail crime, I'd like to know how we get more women involved in that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Ms. Diamond had something she wanted to add.
You wanted to ask?
Oh, as it pertains, the word woman, it has man included in it. And so my thing is, I would definitely challenge and make people aware of the underlying sense of divisiveness that is within the client now, and to suggest that they really be cognizant of YouTube University and how, even though it's highly informative, to be very, very cautious as to what they're listening to during times of shifts that also replicate and are very familiar from the past times, that you're very aware as to whom they're surrounding themselves with, to understand that, particularly from my positioning, I was raised by a man who was a federal contractor and never knew I would end up walking that walk. I would see him coming from working from the Department of Transportation as a child when we lived in Washington, D.C. And I never knew, in sitting in those sessions, that it would be something I was picking up on as a 10-year-old. And so to have that man doing those particular things, I always understood that at some point I was going to be working in concert with men at all times. I believe that the true issue is, as women continue continue to thrive and as they are enhancing, it has created some sense of irritation that has created this dialogue. And so I just want to be mindful that the issue can be assuaged, as well as there is comfort in knowing that there's a necessity for the both of us to be able to add so much to the conversation, because there are things that we both do mutually exclusive very well, and as well enmeshed. So those are my comments.
I want to make a comment here. I got to say this because it's
All right.
really, again, appreciate you very much. And see, I have, of course, I know we hadn't talked about the glass ceiling, but there's certain things in your life you can't comprehend. I only worked one place, and I ended up being an owner after about 8 years, and I surrounded myself with people that could do the job, and I didn't care what their sexual orientation is, what their color was, anything. And the people that had a good work ethic, good attitude, came to work, and could make me money, they moved to the top. And I never understood the unequal pay thing, and so I have a hard time with it, because I had women, that second shift supervisors, that made more than the guys because they'd been there longer and they're more experienced, and surrounded myself with the women in key positions, and so how much of a problem is the glass ceiling thing? And we've made much progress, have we, in your opinion? And there's nothing wrong with your, I mean, honest opinion. I know it puts you on the spot, but we are making progress, I hope. And if you would answer.
That's such a load that we could be here all night talking about the glass.
We don't do that.
All
But I
right, well, I'm
think-
going to leave it here because we're way over time. But thank you very much for y'all presenting and all the presenters. Meeting adjourned.
I can talk to you.
We work together this summer.